Grief leaves fingerprints on your heart. And I really like that because it's not necessarily a gut punch all the time. It's more subtle, but it's there. It's an impression that's there. And to just embrace that, that's part of that person is still there, their fingerprints on your heart.
Hello and welcome to Guess Who Died, a podcast where we talk about who died and how we feel about it with hosts Jeff, myself, Julia, and producer KC. All right, Jeff, it's been a little while since I've seen you, so who died?
Sid Krofft passed away April 10th, 96 years old. He was involved with his brother Marty with HR Puffin Stuff, Land of the Lost,
Oh,
The Bugaloos, Sigmund and the Sea Monsters.
Oh my gosh, I loved that.
Electra Woman and Diana Girl that had Deidre Hall on it as a super person. Yes. So when I was younger in the 70s, they had a show on Saturdays called the Krofft Super Show.
Okay.
And they had all these little mini-series in this show, and they had a band called Captain Cool and the Gang.
No kidding.
Or Captain Cool and the Kong, something like that. But I remember every Saturday I watched it, and they had like the Wonder Bug, they had Bigfoot and Wild Boy, just weird, cool stuff.
When you say he was involved, was he the primary talent?
Yeah, he and his brother created it. They were
they
producers of these shows.
Okay, so he created HR Puffin Stuff.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Johnny and the Magic Flute.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
Witchy
R.I.P.
Poo, all that.
Sid.
Yeah.
So yeah, 96. His brother passed before him, so that was one that that hit because brought back memories from when I was a kid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A life well lived.
Oh my gosh. The first one I will do. Columbo's daughter died. Peter Falk, his daughter died. I think she died by suicide. Jacqueline Falk. She was 60 years old and died by suicide. So Columbo is something that is very, 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 very near and dear to my family. And we are Peter Falk stands in my home. And so just sad.
I got one more yesterday, Kyle Busch.
That was my other one, yes.
That was, wasn't a huge racing fan, but my family, I'm around enough of them to know who he is and how great a racer he was. Two-time champion, passed away yesterday at 41 in the hospital after a serious illness, unexpected. Truck series, Busch series. He raced all weekend, every time he raced, and he was loved and hated. He was one of those drivers, but he was good.
It's, again, one of those things, much like you, I'm not a race person, but there are plenty of people in my life who are. My grandfather was huge into it, and so you have to look at lives like Kyle who really made it mainstream. You think of the race circuit for so long, it was kind of just that thing. And folks like him and the Pettys and the like really made it.
Earnharts of the world,
Yeah, they made it a big deal. And so, his legacy has lived.
He was my aunt's driver.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny. I was talking to somebody about this at Aldous, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. Is it real?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, all the drivers that I know of have died. Only one that I was really aware of was on the track, and that was Dale Sr. There were helicopter crashes, there were plane crashes, and in the hospital, just it had nothing to do with the racetrack.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to me how often that happens. Now, it does happen.
Yeah, now I would say that there's different leagues and different styles. So even locally, we've had deaths on the track that here at Olivia's house, the local Grief and Loss Center, we've supported. But on that national scope, I think the only one that I can pull up is Earnhardt.
So Kyle Busch was still driving. He was going to be driving next weekend. And last weekend when he was driving, he did an interview and they said, "Why are you still doing this?" And he said, "Because you never know when a race is going to be your last."
Oh, man.
So, we are not a NASCAR family, but my stepdad raced sprint cars for many years. He was really good. He was pretty big. And so he...
Sorry, I stole that from you.
No, that was my only other one I had. I was coming with Columbo's daughter, so I'm good. Yeah.
All right, well then, you guys, we've missed a very big one, larger than life. You have to bring in Ted Turner to the mix.
I had Ted Turner.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to bring him.
You have to talk Ted Turner, for good or bad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. TBS, CNN,
everything.
Headline News, the Atlanta Braves.
The Atlanta Braves, yeah.
This has been a Turner broadcast.
I was lucky enough years ago to go down to Atlanta and stay at the CNN, hotel and the whole night. It's a thing. It is, what he built down there in Atlanta is massive. And again, some say the fall of our country with 24-hour news, but he had the foresight to do it. I mean, he was a bold personality, no doubt.
They did get. I mean, yeah, when I look back to that, I felt like, and I know we talked probably the night after it happened, and I said, that he just wanted news to be available to people all the time. He had no idea what was going to happen down the road.
Right.
And now we get too much of it.
Yeah.
And we get that. We all understand that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a mogul.
What was, and again, here's my naivety. I know there was like a big deal. Who did he date or marry? Was it Fonda?
Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was a big scuttle, right?
About 10 years they were married.
I love
And,
Jane.
Yeah, they were always in the stands together at Braves games.
Yeah.
And I think he owned the Hawks too, if I'm not
okay.
mistaken. But yeah,
Yeah.
life well lived.
Life
Yeah.
definitely well lived.
Yeah.
He was 87.
Okay, so then other ones on the list I can burn through, but definitely worth mentioning. Patrick Muldoon was an actor on Days of Our Lives and Melrose Place. I knew him better for Starship Troopers, the movie, but he died of a heart attack at 57. So rest his soul there. Another one that has to be discussed, I know Julia loves her sports, but Jason Collins of the NBA died of brain cancer on May 12th at age 47. And not that you care much about sports, but he is I don't know if he's icon, but he was the first openly gay player in any of the 4 major league sports.
Love that.
Another one that I wanted to talk and bring to the pod, Roger Sweet died at the age of 91 of dementia, but he was the toy designer who created He-Man and Masters of the Universe.
Oh.
And as that's now coming to cinema, I
Yeah.
thought, well, that's kind of an interesting time.
Yeah.
He couldn't hold on to
Yeah.
catch that. But I didn't know, Jeff. I remember growing up with the He-Man toys. We had them growing up, but I don't remember. I thought it was a show first. They created, I believe they created the toys first and then built a show around it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know my cousin Scott loved it. He had all of them. I took him to the first He-Man movie, Masters of the Universe movie.
Yeah.
And I was going to call him and say, hey, you want to go to this?
You have to. You have to. Yeah.
I don't know, but they were really cool toys back then. I mean, they were good.
Yeah, I don't think there was a boy in the 80s who didn't have Skeletor in the collection of things.
Yeah. Castle Grayskull. That was a bonus. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And those things are valuable now. I'm sad I gave them all to the Goodwill.
That make you sick.
I know it does a little bit. But interesting, again, array of people here this month. Some very big names and some lesser known names that you wouldn't have.
Well, we've had a little time in between, so that made the list get a little longer than usual.
Yeah.
So,
But I always love being able to highlight all sorts of folks and all of their impact on our culture.
100%. Well, speaking of impact, our guest today has had a huge impact on my life. We are very excited, me maybe more than everyone else, to welcome our podcast guest after this break. My mom will be joining us in the studio. So we will be right back on Guess Who Died? Olivia's House is an independent, freestanding, nonprofit grief and loss center that supports children and their families before, during, or after a loss, all at no cost. When death enters your house, you are welcome at our house, where families are met with professional care, expert guidance, and resources for children and teens of any age. Nestled in central Pennsylvania, Olivia's House continues to be the premier independent grief and loss center.
and welcome back to Guess Who Died? Your hosts, Julia and myself, Jeff, along with our producer, Casey, and a very special guest today. Unexpected until a couple days ago.
I know. Our very fun guest, my mom. Welcome, Cathy, to the studio.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hi, Mama.
Hi, sweetie.
So the title of the podcast is Guess Who Died? Mm-hmm. You've got a couple directions you could go with that, Mama. So when I ask you who died, who dies?
Okay. Well, your dad died. And he died when you were 12. And you are now 36. Mm-hmm. So it's been 24 years. But in thinking about this podcast today, leading up to this, I remembered some journals that I had kept many years ago that I came across about 10 years ago. and they have to do with your dad. And when I discovered them about 10 years ago, I started reading through them. A lot of writing, 3 spiral notebooks filled around the time that I was engaged to your dad, when you were born, and so forth. And some of it was hard to read again, so I closed it up, put it back in a drawer, and told my husband, if I die suddenly, get those notebooks out and burn them. So you can read them first if you like. He's entitled to read them, but I don't really want them found without me being able to explain, or I just don't want them found. So I put them aside for 10 years, but leading up to this podcast, I thought, you know what, I want to get them out again and have the courage to read through some of the stuff I was going through then. Because before your dad died, I sort of lost him before that when we were engaged to be married, and I broke off the engagement. That was the first loss. And that's the first grief that I felt over your dad. So that goes back to the late 1980s. And, you know, he and I had been friends in high school, good friends. And then my family moved into another school district, and we sort of lost touch. And I moved on with my life. He moved on with his. He got married to somebody and had a baby. But then we got together again in the 1970s, and we dated and went places and did fun things together, and still trying to make this friendship into something more than a friendship. And it didn't really work, and we parted ways again. And I got married and had a baby and got divorced. We found each other again in the 1980s. So here we are, go round number 3. And I'm sure we can make this work. We have got to be more than friends. We know each other so well. It won't be like finding a new person. We've known each other for years. Our families know each other. So let's try to make this work. And we were so sure that we planned a wedding and did not avoid conceiving a child, because we were in our late 30s at this point. We wanted to have a child together. We conceived a child, and things started to become clear that we were still just friends. This was not a romance. It would not be a lifelong partnership. And at 3 months pregnant, I called off the wedding. So that was the first grieving of your dad. And I think it's important for me to acknowledge that. And maybe I've never worked through the grief. And so reading these journals again, to go through all that, that was hard, because what had died was my hopes for the future, for a happy marriage. I had been married, and I failed at that marriage, and I didn't want to fail at a marriage again. So what died was the person I thought was my fiance, the person I thought he was or could be, what we could be together. My 3-year-old son had started calling him daddy. So my son was losing a daddy. So it was really, really hard.
And that's so shocking to hear, because from my perspective, growing up, having 2 parents that were never together ever in my entire existence, from my perspective, you guys hardly knew each other. I had a mom's house, and then a dad would come and pick me up. You'd never talked. I was like, these are my people, but I don't know if they are aware of each other at all. And so it's just so funny to hear that and now be an adult and think of like my high school boyfriends who I'm still in contact with. And
yes,
that,
well, as my
we share a lot of similarities, which we
close
know.
high school friend, he drove me to colleges for me to look at colleges. He taught me how to drive stick shift, which I taught you how to drive. So it's a legacy.
I know.
I wish you still drive, and so do I.
And he wasn't alive by the time I was learning how to drive. So in some ways, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first grieving, was ending that. And a memory that I had in reflecting back on this, I don't think I allowed myself to feel the grief. I think I closed down. But a couple of weeks after we called off the wedding, and I think we both experienced 2 things, grief and relief, because 2 things can be true at the same time. And I think we both felt relieved. We both knew it wasn't the right thing. But I couldn't cry. And a couple of weeks after I called off the wedding, I took Luke, my little 3-year-old son, to Dutch Wonderland, an amusement park, our local amusement park. And just with wild abandon, on a single parent budget, we couldn't really afford amusement parks. We were going to do it. And we walk into the amusement park, and the first thing you see at this park is animatronic bears doing a show, like robots, you know. And they're moving and singing, and they're playing the banjo and the fiddle and the drums, and there's benches. And we sat down and watched the animatronic bears, Bubba Bear and his Badland Band, and I started crying. And Luke loved the show, and I have tears rolling down my face. So Bubba Bear got it started, the healing. So anyway.
Tale as old as time.
Good old Bubba. So that was my first grieving of the loss of your dad. but
Yeah.
he didn't die for 12 years.
No, he didn't.
No.
He was a dad for a while. And it's interesting to hear you use the language that you use because you are such a poetic, beautiful speaker, which I get from you. But to hear you talk about grief and relief is we talk about that with loss so often. That relief is a huge part of loss that people often don't talk about because they're ashamed to. And it's scary to say, you know, this, my child's parent died or whoever died, my partner, and I'm devastated and my whole life is torn up. And at the same time, this now takes a burden off my plate that previously existed because of their aliveness, whether that was mental illness, anything, the dynamics in their relationship. So it's just great to hear you put that into words, and I think going to be very relatable for a lot of people.
Totally. I can totally relate to that. And you use the word shame. And if Steve had just died at that point, I would have felt grief and sadness and loss and a lot of things, and maybe relief even, but not shame. But I felt shame because I felt I had caused this situation. Why did I put my little son through this? Why did I bring a person into his life that he was calling daddy, and now I'm taking him away? You know, so I felt guilt. I felt responsible for making poor decisions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, guilt and shame along with it.
So take it from there. What happened 12 years later?
Yeah. Your dad and I co-parented you successfully, at least in my view, we did, and worked together. You lived with me, but he could see you anytime, and we could work together on which days and things like that. So that was a good thing. He didn't take care of himself. He was an introvert, a very private person. He was a computer nerd. Before people had home computers, he worked on computers at his job, and that was his world. And he was really introverted, almost reclusive in some ways. When he died in his computer in his apartment. So
She told me when he died, and she said this with the utmost sincerity, at least he died doing what he loved. Sitting at his computer.
It's true.
That's what people say when someone dies, like running, and that running was their passion, or like climbing Mount Everest. But she held my hand, looked, at least he died doing what he loved. And I'm like, downloading something? But it's so true. It is so true.
And I don't remember telling you that.
Yes, you did.
This story's just got me flabbergasted.
Yes.
I mean, I'm amazed by this story already. So please keep going.
Yes.
I mean,
Well, we co-parented Julia, and her daddy took care of her while I worked, so I never needed to use daycare. So that really worked out. He took care of both children, Julia and her older brother.
5 o'clock in the morning, you'd leave for work, and Dad would show up, pitch black.
Yep. And there was one night I worked at a graphic arts company, and we did some high-end projects, and one of them was a top secret project that needed a proofreader all night long. It was Hillary Clinton's health care plan is what it was. But I couldn't tell anybody that. So I had to call Steve and say, can you come over to my house and sleep on the sofa tonight and be with the kids? And I can't tell you why. I have a top secret project. So, and he would show up, and he was wonderful about that. So he loved Julia very much, very, very much. Fast forward to when he died. You know, the notification didn't come through in the most ideal of circumstances. Julia came home from school and found a message on the answering machine, because this is before smartphones. So we had a landline, we had an answering machine, and it was Steve's sister-in-law just calling me and saying, this is Carol. Cathy, can you give me a call? She knew right away something was wrong. Why would Steve's sister-in-law call me? She never called me. We didn't have a relationship. I didn't know that call had come through because Carol then called me at work and told me the news. So I was shocked and stunned and sort of in a daze. And 2 of my coworkers offered to go home with me.
Well, and I called you at work.
Oh,
Because I got the voicemail and I called you freaking out.
Yes.
And you couldn't take my call because you were on the phone with Carol. So I am like, or you were maybe on the phone with my school at that point, because I remember whoever I spoke to at your job said, she can't talk to you right now. She's on the phone. And I think they said on the phone with your school, because at that point I said, please let me be in trouble. Please let this not have anything to do with my dad. I don't know why Aunt Carol was calling, but if she's on the phone with my school, maybe I'm in trouble for something. And I didn't even think you'd be calling the school to tell them my dad died, which obviously you were. But yeah, so then your coworkers.
Yeah. So 2 of my coworkers offered to come home with me, one to drive with me in my car and the other one to follow along to return the first person back to the office. And they were not coworkers I was close to. So it created an awkward situation. Here I am showing up home at the door with two of my not very close coworkers, and it was awkward.
It was awkward.
And I thought, Julia is going to know this is really weird and odd and bad. Why do I have these two not very close people by my side? So that's the first regret I have. I would have been fine driving home, or I could have called my mother or my sister who lived nearby. I wish I had not had these two individuals who were well-meaning, or maybe they were looking forward to the drama. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
It's always a little bit of both with those people,
yeah.
but that is, again, something that we deal with very often in this line of work is people constantly, this death just happened. What can I do? I need to jump into action. I have a compulsion to jump into action immediately. And for us to be able to say, listen to us as experts, not jumping into action and getting involved is going to be the most helpful thing you can do. And it's because of experiences like this, whether lived myself or in the work that we do, that I'm able to say, I'm not just making this up. This is a real thing. Here's the evidence behind it. That's not what the kids need right now, is for mom's friend to show up. And, that's not what a child needs. But of course, I'm not blaming you. I just mean in general, the calls that we take here.
And if they had been close friends who you also loved, that might have been different, but these were virtual strangers. So I told you, I guess, in front of them.
Oh, yeah, because Annette
There they are.
said, I'm sure you didn't think this was the news your mom was going to say. And I was so mad because I was like, I have literally figured it out. I figured it out from the voicemail. I've now extra figured it out long before she said it. You idiot. I was so annoyed when she said, I'm sure. I was like that. Now, yes, no. Oh, I'm still upset about it. That was very irritating, Annette. I'm sure you weren't expecting it. What else would be happening? What else was
I know.
Okay, anyway, go ahead.
Oh, man.
And you went up to your room, is my recollection.
And I called Anthony, my boyfriend.
Oh, I forgot that. Yeah. So, and I think what followed was a period of sort of shutting down.
Has it ever ended?
In some ways, no.
Yeah.
In some ways, no.
I know.
Yeah. And yet it's interesting. I wish I could have sought out a grief support program for my 12-year-old daughter. Instead, I took her to a therapist for cognitive therapy. It was somebody that I had seen, really liked, and we drove half an hour out of town to where her office was. And she was a very nice person and a good therapist, but it wasn't what my daughter needed. And I didn't know what you needed. But
no parent does in that situation.
yeah, but if there could have been a grief and loss support group for children, that would have been something I could have sought out, but I didn't know of anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did take me to the local hospice. They had the program but it wasn't a family base. You would drop me off and made some friends there, met some cute boys.
I did forget about that. I totally forgot about that.
Because you weren't a part of it.
That's
I
right.
know, exactly. See? I know. It's really interesting. So
Yeah.
So how was it with a 12-year-old daughter, and you were probably feeling a little overwhelmed, not knowing what to do?
Yeah.
How did you deal? How did you handle it all?
That's a really good question. And I did a lot of journaling, as evidenced by these spiral notebooks. I do have a good support system of friends and even mentors. And so I, shared with them, and they were very supportive. But otherwise, I think, should I tell them about the note on the computer?
Right.
So, yeah. Julia had been communicating with a friend of hers. It was right after this. Would you say it was within a week or two or something like that? And it was a note that expressed that she wished I had died instead of her dad. Now, of all the things I did wrong, I don't think I responded wrong to that. Because
that was more just humiliating for me.
For you.
Yeah.
I took it, when I found the note, it was on the computer, and I found it. I took her aside right away and said, I saw the note that you wrote to so-and-so, and I said, I love you, and I know you love me, and I know you're hurting. I know you're hurting really badly. So I think I interpreted that as her just hurting and reaching out in pain, but not that you literally wished I was dead.
No, didn't. You still don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So it just, we had some other problems in the family in future years with addiction and so forth. So that, and that person's in recovery now. So, life, other things came out of left field.
Yeah, that really took priority over other things that we had to heal from.
It did.
Happen pretty quickly after.
It did. And that pushed Julia back to the back again. And that was not fair to you. And I don't know, I think the relationship we have today is a close one, but still somewhat closed off. We're still maybe somewhat closed off from each other, even though we love each other very much. But you can always tell me anything.
I do.
Yeah. So Julia was kind of backburnered again, I think. And that isn't a good thing.
Mm-mm.
No.
Did she fight her way to the front burner? How did you find your way back?
I completely figured out my life on my own.
Okay.
I just did everything on my own. And I still do.
And do you mean emotionally? Because in terms of the logistics of your life, like college and things like that.
Well, like when we were talking about like me playing volleyball and you don't have a memory of that, things like that.
Although it did come back to me as soon as you said that, but
Right. But it was like years and years and many volleyball teams and stuff like that.
I apologize for that.
It's all good.
Although, to be fair, I forget some of the stuff
You
brother
do.
did too.
But
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with boyfriends, families, and just did my own thing. Then you started dating when I was like 15. And then I just extra did my own thing, which I was thrilled to do. I'm a recluse like my dad and my mom.
Yeah, we're all introverted.
You
Very
push through
introverted.
it a little bit more, but you challenge yourself.
Yeah.
But it is a challenge. She will acknowledge that being social is hard and then gives herself congratulations afterwards. I just skipped the whole thing.
I do have a lot of close friends, and when we have a date to meet for breakfast or lunch or coffee or whatever, there's a part of me hoping they'll cancel.
Yes.
The last minute, maybe they'll cancel, and phew.
I know. We love it.
But then once we have our get together, I'm grateful for it, and I feel better for it. It's enriched my life.
She always tells me that, and I say, sure thing, lady. All right. I mean, that was Dad. You talk a lot about journaling, which really makes me think a lot about Nan, because journaling was a huge part of your story of losing your parent, which, Jeff, that's something you and my mom have in common, that you both lost a mom. Jeff's a little bit more recent than yours, which she knows from listening to the podcast. I'm not divulging new info. But that was intense. And we haven't had anyone on the podcast yet who has had a loved one in their home, a parent who they have been actively the carer for. I mean, that was really, really intense when Nan was dying. And that fell pretty squarely on your shoulders.
My mother and I had a complicated relationship, which probably every mother or daughter can say that. She came here from another country, and she came here with ideas about what society would be like here, and she got her ideas from Hollywood movies. And instead it was just a, working class neighborhood in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, just a regular, ordinary neighborhood with ordinary people. And it wasn't ballroom dancing all the time and glamour. And
I was going to say she wanted glamour.
She loved
She would
glamour.
make my grandpa walk on the other side of the street from her because he was not up to her standards of glamour, right? I'm lying. She was really,
She was a character. She was a character. And she became a hairstylist and had a big salon in downtown Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So she loved me very much, but wasn't able to be present as a mother. She didn't quite get how things worked in this country. She'd had a difficult childhood during World War II in Italy.
like she had no concept at all that a parent would accompany a child to school, like walk them to school, make sure go to your rehearsal, or go to their concert. Like my mom was in a choral concert. Nan had no concept that a parent would go to something like that. So she didn't for anything my mom did, but it wasn't out of neglect. It didn't even register. It's like if you asked me why I didn't paint your toenails this morning, Jeff, I'd be like, well, I didn't even think of it. What do you mean why? I didn't think I was supposed to. That was the level of
Disconnect.
Right. But it was so painful to you as a child, but not out of maliciousness,
No.
maybe disinterest
No,
in parenting a little bit.
She loved us, though. She
Yeah.
loved my sister and me. So then she became a grandmother when my nephews were born, and then I had 2 children, and she was an amazing grandmother. She came into her own as a grandmother, and she attended every single event, every sporting event or practice, little league practice. She was there. She showed up one time having had 4 wisdom teeth removed, and she showed up with gauze stuffed in her mouth to stop the bleeding. And she's sitting there in a lawn chair watching her nephews play little league.
And at a concert, she was always the first to yell, Bravo!
She was from Italy, so bravo! Grandma.
She'd start the clap every time.
So she came to every concert, every event that Julia was in, and her brother and my 2 nephews. So she was a wonderful grandmother. So as time went on, and she lived in her own home until she was 87 years old. And then one day
And I mentioned a grandfather, but she was divorced for most of her life. My whole life, she was
married 3 times.
Yeah, but there
Sounds
was
like my grandmother.
Yes, but there's this theme of like singlehood in my family. There was never a grandma marriage relationship. This was my glamorous grandmother lived on her own, owned a beauty shop that was attached to her house, and single-handedly raised my mom.
Yep.
Yeah.
She did ballroom dancing in her 70s. She was amazing. So she worked until she was 87 years old. And then one day she had a stroke in her home. So after that, she didn't feel comfortable living alone anymore. So she moved into our house in York, Pennsylvania, half an hour from where she had been living. So for the next 3.5 years, she at first just lived with us, and then my sister and I shared the care. And so she would spend a week on and off, a week with us, a week with my sister. So both of us were responsible for the care of our mom. But that was an amazing experience. We often were at odds. We often didn't see eye to eye. But in her last weeks of life, one day I was sitting with her in her room, and she looked at me and she said, I want you to know I've really been happy here. I want you to know that. And then she said, tell Norm, that's my husband, who I met in my 50s. We met and married in our 50s, and I'm 75 now. She looked at me and she said, tell Norm to always take good care of you. So it was very sweet at the end. And in the last few weeks, she was under hospice care at our home. And I basically moved into her room in the last couple of weeks, and she insisted on continuing to sleep in her recliner, refused to sleep in the hospital bed, which hospice had provided. So I slept in the hospital bed. They're not very comfortable. They make a lot of noise. They're in some almost like canvas straps just tied to a metal frame. It's like, and every time you move it in, just creak, 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 And so I slept in the hospital bed, and finally the hospice nurse convinced her to move into the hospital bed. I slept in the recliner.
Yes.
So when she passed, I called my husband over, and he and I were sitting by her bed, on the edge of the bed, holding her hand. So in her life, it was sort of all about her in a way. She loved to talk about her life. She had a very interesting life. She has archival pictures from World War II and from the 1800s.
But you butted heads while you were,
did.
That was tough. That was a real struggle. I remember that being a hard time for you.
One time she said her looks were so important to her. She was a very attractive woman, and looks were very important. And one time she said to me, if only we could just still look good when we died. Look young and look good. And I got mad, and I said, well, some people are lucky and die when they're 30. That's sort of nasty thing for me to say to her, but that's what I said. I was so mad. What a wish to have that we could still look good when we die.
That is so Nan. And as you're saying it, I'm sitting here like, I don't understand what's wrong with that. That makes total sense to me. Nan and I were very similar in a lot of ways like that.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like I had talked about the journaling. You journaled a lot. Can you talk a little bit about the reasoning behind that, or how that was helpful for you? Because it was really down to like specific details in those last couple of days and weeks of what was happening.
Of her life, you're talking about, And now I type journaling instead of handwriting. It's so like I'm a fast typist. I used to be a typesetter, so it's a real free flow of feelings and thoughts that I can just get it all out. So, I did keep a journal with many, many, many pages of her life with me. And it's funny, as much as we did talk about her life, because she liked to talk about that, And I had made her a slideshow when she turned 80 and had music and everything and segments of her life. And she used to love to watch that over and over. She even showed friends the slideshow of her life, As much as we did talk about her life, a regret I have is I would like to talk about it some more.
Yeah.
I would like to talk to her a little more. And not even like the big events, but something that's occurred to me in recent years. I don't remember what we had for dinner on holidays. And neither does my sister. And we can't remember. Did we have ham, turkey? And my paternal grandmother lived across the street from us, and we spent a lot of time at her house. We had a lot of meals at her house because my mother had her beauty shop, and it was open till 7 or 8 o'clock at night. But holidays, I'm sure we ate. But my sister and I cannot remember any special meals, And I'd like to ask my mother, what did we do on holidays?
Yeah.
Did you cook because the shop was closed? Did my grandmother, did my nanny cook? Do we have something special or just sort of a regular meal? Oh. I do want to mention one thing here. I mentioned my sister that we shared in the care of my mom. through the years, my mom and I did do a lot of things together, especially when Luke and Julia were born. And my mother went to all of their events, and we four went on outings together and things like that. My sister and her husband were extremely important in supporting my mom all through the decades. She never stayed married, so her only income was what she could earn from her shop. And Vicki and Dick, my sister and her husband, were there every step of the way to help her with any financial decisions, to help her financially, to help her with the upkeep of her home, to do work around the house, and to take her places. I just want to really be clear about that.
Yeah.
In some ways, I was good at some fun things that we would do. But the pragmatic, practical, helping her to stay in her own home until she was 87. The credit goes to my sister for that.
Yeah, because we really there was no man in the family. There was me, you, Nan, and then Aunt Vicky, and then Uncle Dick was the one man. So anything that was like, we need a ladder and someone to climb, like it was like, and he didn't necessarily do that for us, but like for Nan, that was the person. He would have if we asked, but it was, they were the people that you would just call. They're so practical. They are always there, reliable. I mean, just that.
And they still are the go-to people.
For everything.
For everything.
Know exactly who. I needed an armoire, and I knew to text my aunt, and I'd get an armoire. She'd spot one in a thrift store within 3 days. So, yeah. Mom, you are so wise. I love you so much. What wisdom do you have? I use your wisdom and your wise bits constantly. I sprinkle them into everything I do. So what wisdom do you have for our listeners on raising a bereaved child into an amazing woman, how to navigate losing your parent as a parent and a grandparent yourself? What advice do you have?
I mean, I would say seek support and seek help, and don't assume you know all the answers. I wish I had sought more help in dealing with it, and not assumed that just my love was enough. And I saw a quote recently that grief leaves fingerprints on your heart. And I really like that because it's not necessarily a gut punch all the time. It's more subtle, but it's there. It's an impression that's there, and to just embrace that. That's part of that person is still there. Their fingerprints on your heart. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here. This was part of my healing process.
Me too. It was a pleasure.
I love you.
I love you.
Oh, thank you very much. From the bear, making you feel those fingers on your heart, to probably trying to figure out what was done at dinner on holidays. Just as, thank you. It's been a pleasure hearing the story.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Jeff, take us away with our final ritual here.
Okay. So every time we do a show, we cheers the person that we've lost. So we'll cheers.
You want to cheers
Steve and Maria?
Yeah, let's do Steve and Maria.
1, 2, 3.
To Steve and Maria. We'll be right back on Guess Who Died.
Guess Who Died is brought to you by Olivia's House, a grief and loss center for children. Olivia's House is a community-funded organization that provides comfort and education to families when they need it most, and we are able to keep our doors open thanks to donations from people just like you. Find out ways to support or get support from Olivia's House by visiting www.oliviashouse.org. Welcome back to Guess Who Died. I'm Jeff, that's Julia, and welcome back, producer Casey.
Thank you. Isn't that one of those things where you say, welcome to this very special episode?
Yes.
I was saying, I didn't know what to say. I was watching you and your mom interact and tell the story, and it was like a very moving tennis match. And there were moments I was able to, throw some questions in there, but watching, I could feel the emotion between the two of you, and it was very moving.
Yeah.
And it was a story I didn't know about you. I've known you for a little while now, and here you are.
Yeah.
Doing what you do.
Yeah.
What brought you to grief counseling?
Well, I mean, I always knew I wanted to be a therapist since I was a little kid, and everyone that you just heard described in my family, I am very much a part of each of them. I have my dad's reclusiveness. I have my grandma, my nan, like her wanting to look sexy. That was totally like embedded in me from her. Prioritize that. And from my aunt, I got that like meticulous, let's just be pragmatic about things and let's just do the bare minimum and get it done and move on to the next thing. That's why I'm not like the biggest fan of small talk, because I'm like, we've engaged with each other. Goodbye. Complete. So I knew when I was 8 years old I wanted to be a therapist, and then I was just like, check that off the list. I'm done. I have my life goal. Like I don't ever need to think about again what I want to do for work. So that just always was in my bones that that's what I wanted to do. And then, yeah, it wasn't really until I got out of grad school and found a place like Olivia's house where we record this podcast from that I got into this actual field working in it. But it, mental health has always been top priority to me.
Julia, you said how you're like your dad. You said how you're like your grandma. You said how you're like your aunt. How are you like your mom?
I mean, definitely the emotion, able to, yeah, and just the introversion too. I mean, that's a huge piece that we very much have in common. But yeah,
When she was coming in, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I almost wasn't going to say a word because sometimes you just don't need to.
Yeah.
And when she was asking you about the note that you wrote and you bringing, how did that make you feel at that moment?
So we have different memories of the note. My memory is that I had written an email in a Word document and then copy and pasted it into an email body and sent it, and forgot to then copy something else. So the next time someone got on the computer, if they hit paste, it would have pasted my entire letter. That is my memory of it because I did not leave it for her intentionally to find. And that is her perception, is that I left it for her intentionally to find. So that is just a piece of the story that we differ on. Which doesn't change it too much. And whether I did it intentionally or not, it doesn't matter. But it just always surprises me how much that hurts her still. Because you can tell it hurts her when she's like, and I told you I didn't believe that was true. And like, she really goes into it versus just being like, oh, well, obviously you didn't mean that. Like, let's move on. Obviously you didn't mean that. And that's a nothing burger. But she doesn't treat it like that. She treats it very reverently in a way that really destroyed her when she read that. And that is interesting for me to kind of perseverate on.
Well, I think you can recognize even in her own comments how it can be both, right? It's both things. So she can understand it and be okay with it.
Right.
And also hurt by it.
Totally.
That's tough to hear or read or see. Even though you as a professional would, if a mother had walked into your office today and asked you about it, you'd say, well, of course. They're kids.
Yes, and that is how I would. I'd be like, oh, yeah, okay, that's totally fine. I'm glad they're expressing themselves. Wonderful. Love to hear that they're journaling. Yes. That's awesome. I wouldn't even go in the direction of.
But even if, why wouldn't she be, want to be with her father? He let her have everything she wanted. He bought her every meal under the sun. Of course she's going to say that. It doesn't mean what you think it means.
Totally.
It doesn't mean the same thing to you as it does to your daughter.
Right. Yeah. And that's just an interesting piece, is that I very much am like, yeah, that was just one of the things that many kids, I don't know. I'm like, oh, yeah. So it's interesting, the things that hurt us each out of this.
Well, when I asked her about how it was, as you were growing up after your father passed, what was it like with her? You had said before when you were in school, it gave you a story. And that you kind of leaned into that a little bit. I didn't know if that affected your relationship with mom or not.
Yeah, so it wasn't so much that this gave me a story in school. It was that it added to my life story.
Okay.
So I was not talking about this in school at all. I did not share. I didn't go around telling people at school. I was very much, and especially that year of 7th grade, I shut down completely. Like, I didn't want to tell anyone when my birthday was. If people wished me a happy birthday on my birthday, I'd be like, shut up. I don't want anyone else to know. I swore off men. I said, dating is so stupid. Why does anyone want to date when we're 12? I'm never going to date. Like, I just had a lot of big declarative statements that I sort of stood by. And one of them being like, nobody's getting past this. So I definitely wasn't sharing that story, but I knew it was good for my life memoir. But yeah, for my mom, so we just have like different memories of this, but she was very preoccupied with everything going on with my brother. and then dating that we just didn't. My mom and I didn't really get close until I was in college. And it was when I was in college and I saw other people saying like I love you to their moms when they would hang up the phone. I'd be like, oh, I want to do that. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, I'd like to start saying I love you because it sounds cool. Like it's cute when people do that. And from then on, we said I love you when we hung up the phone, but we never did that before. Not because we don't love each other, we just didn't. And same, I would be like, Mom, I think like girls seem to go out to lunch with their moms. Like maybe we try that. And so then we would do that. And so it was sort of college where we got kind of close. But yeah, everything up until then, I just sort of remember doing my own thing.
And that was the next question. How did you come to be so close? And thanks for
that's
answering
what it was.
that.
Well, thank you so much for doing this episode, Julia. I know when we proposed it was a question. I said, I'd love to do this. I'd love to have your mom on if you're willing.
I said, yay.
And you were
I
excited
love my
to do
mom
this.
so much. I really do. I cherish her.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing your history and your family's history so openly and honestly and candidly. And I hope that it helps others. But if anything other than to give a perspective of what it is to be a bereaved child and what growth can come from that and how we can continue forward.
Absolutely. All right. This was an excellent episode. Thank you all for welcoming my mom into the studio. And we will see you next time on Guess Who Died? Guess Who Died is an Olivia's House production, sponsored in part by the M&M Lissauer Family Foundation.